come to share with you some amazing stories from around the world, but I wanted to begin with a story of my own. Actually, it begins at one of the low points in my life. About 18 years ago, I was a foreign correspondent based in Tokyo, but I had come home to deliver my first beautiful child. And I got a call from my boss, the bureau chief in Tokyo, and I thought he was calling to congratulate me. But he said, "Wendy, I'm so sorry. We're laying you off. In fact, we're shutting down news operations worldwide." Now, at this time, my husband wasn't working. We were living in a company flat, and America was mired in one of the worst recessions we've ever experienced. So here I was with this newborn baby, about to be unemployed, possibly homeless, and to top it all off, that day, somebody stole our car. But you know, there's something quite clarifying about hitting rock bottom. Because in that moment, I had the audacity to ask myself, "Wendy, if you could do anything you wanted at that moment, what would you do?" And I knew in my heart immediately that what I wanted to do was to tell my father's story, his unique story of being a soldier during World War II, fighting for the Allies with a segregated unit of all Japanese Americans. At the same time that my grandparents, my mother, American-born, all of my relatives were behind barbed wire in a camp in Utah for 3.5 years, their only crime being the same race as the enemy. I knew that this story existed because my father wrote it down. And when I read his story, it was a story of great beauty and great pain, great love for his army buddies. This was a story that I knew only I could tell, a story I firmly believed needed to be told so that our government would never forget that it had once tossed aside the civil liberties of a powerless minority. This was a story I felt in my bones could make a difference. So for the next 1.5 years, I told my father's story in documentary form. Eventually, it aired around the world, throughout the United States, and to this day, it has been one of the most remarkable experiences of my life, telling my father's story. In many ways, it's what propels me to be standing before you today, because once you've done something life-changing, once you have done something with true meaning, it is very hard to go back. We all love stories, don't we? We love stories, and I think in all of us, written in our DNA, is the stories passed down to us from our fathers and our grandfathers and our parents before us. Some of us, like Chimamanda Adichie, who you will meet today, we write down our stories, and we pass them on through books or through magazines. I, 18 years ago, told my story on video, and I transmitted it to audiences via the television. But the way we share stories is changing. There's a new way. And I've come today to show you a glimpse of that future. But first, I want to ask us to consider, why is it even important to share stories? Well, for one thing, I would say it's because too many stories like my father's would go unheard in this world. And even in this era of a global economy, too often important stories get halted at the border, stopped by things like language or technology or culture. Now, I work for a nonprofit television network called Link TV in America, and we exist to give voice to the voiceless, to connect Americans to the stories that Americans know so little about in the world. We call it Television Without Borders. And honestly, I think when it comes to the developing world, too often a single story, a single image comes to represent an entire continent. The story of poverty. The story of genocide. The story of disease. Now, looking at these images, we cannot know them as individuals. They are nameless to us, voiceless, They become some kind of icon of intractable problems from which we can simply walk away. Why? Because we never feel their humanity. But what if we could? What if we could know them, hear their stories, and more importantly, what if we could harness their power and hand the power of those stories over to you, people who really want to make a change in this world? Well, at Link TV, we had a hunch. We had a hunch that there were great stories out there in the developing world waiting to be told. So we decided to hold this contest. We put out a call around the world for stories under 5 minutes about progress in the Millennium Development Goals. And we got some amazing results. Stories of tremendous originality, like Kenya.
My father was sick, so according to our custom, all the men his age were now my fathers. There is a tradition among my people that someone who comes to you before the sunrise will bring good news, and you must not tell them no. So I went to them, one by one. When all the elders agreed, the whole village came together and combined their money. For the first time ever, a girl from our village would go to college. Today, I am finishing my PhD. I did get married, but it was to a man that I chose. My dream of becoming a teacher has grown. I have built the first primary school for girls in my village, a place where girls can be free, a place where they can dream, a place that lets them know that their dreams are possible. I am Kakenya Ntaya. This is my vital voice. Now raise yours.
This is a beautiful story, isn't it? But I have to tell you the truth. Some of the films we received that made me the happiest were not necessarily the most polished. Some of the ones that made me happiest were from the farthest corners of the earth, from Nepal, remote parts of Indonesia, and Rwanda. I want you to meet a young filmmaker named Olivier Uwayezu from Kigali, Rwanda. Olivier was 8 at the time of the Rwandan genocide. After high school, he learned a therapeutic technique called active listening, in which he helped victims to heal by listening to their stories. And after hearing story after shattering story, Olivier decided that he needed to become a filmmaker so that he could record these stories for all time. But Olivier told me that in his country, there are no colleges where one can learn filmmaking, so he had to pick it up on his own. Eventually, he won a fellowship to study his craft abroad. And I'm happy to say that today, Olivier Uwayezu has 3 films in our contest, all in English, which is not his native language. And he is now reaching an international audience. Here's a short clip from his film, The Power of Gacaca.
As a Rwandan who perpetuated the genocide, it's a great forgiveness that I benefited because I've never thought that I could be released from the prison. We are very happy because people who destroyed this country are the same people who are building it.
In all, we received and accepted 137 films representing 50 different nations. When I see these stories, when I hear these voices, I cannot walk away. Instead, I am mesmerized by people like Ranjina Hamidi of Kandahar, Afghanistan. Ranjina is a smart, savvy businesswoman, but she works and lives in a society in which women are not allowed to leave their homes in order to work. So Ranjina decided to bring the work to them. She now employs over 450 women in the ancient craft of embroidery, and she markets that worldwide. I also met Shrey Neth, sold into prostitution at the age of 14 by her mother, who was destitute, now living in Cambodia with HIV. But Shrey was rescued by the Cambodian police and a foreign NGO, and now she's helping to rescue other women.
I want to help the others, to protect them from the pimps and the brothels.
I'm Srinath. a survivor. It has been 5 years, but I have found my home. I have found my voice, and I am finding myself.
It's a powerful story, but I'm sorry to say that even making good stories is not enough. We need to get them into the hands of people like you who will watch them, who will think about them, who will act upon them, who will make a difference. And the way we are sharing stories is changing before our eyes. I want to give you a sneak peek of the way I believe Shrey and Ranjina and Kakenya's stories will be shared in the very near future. This is a beta version of the site and the project I'm working on, viewchange.org. We're bringing together some of the best stories about global development into one site. But the big goal, the one that keeps me up at night, is how we can make these stories tools of change using something called the semantic web. Now, what is the semantic web? Well, I guess the best way to explain it to you is to show you an example. Imagine that you were Googling the word turkey. Well, right now you would be as likely to get a turkey recipe for Thanksgiving as you would be results for the country. But semantic technology and the people who are writing the code for that allows people to look at the context of the word, at the paragraph, at the sentence, the word surrounding it, and know by analyzing those structures immediately that what you're looking for are results for Turkey, the country. Right now, you see, the web is like this big database, this big open library of information. And it really isn't that there aren't enough good stories, is it? It's that there are too many good stories, too many good articles and blogs and information coming at you, so you're inundated with information. Well, that's where semantic technology comes in. By understanding the deeper meaning of those words, those stories, and putting smart tags to them, it allows us to pinpoint exactly the stories and information that we want and access it when we want it. Well, how would that work when applied to video? Let me show you an example from ViewChange. Now, imagine ViewChange as something like a bookstore. Now, some of us know exactly what book we want to buy, but most of us like to go into a bookstore and we like to browse. Maybe we want to go down the aisle of education. And maybe we actually want a story about sub-Saharan African education. Well, using semantic technology, you're able to look at over 1,000 different topics that our algorithm says are buried in these stories and search very effectively. You can find maybe a story you never knew it existed before landing on one that you actually want to view. In this case, something called Burning in the Sun. It's the story of actually a charming entrepreneur named Daniel Dembele of Mali. Now, Daniel says that in his village, over 99% of the homes have no power. And so he decided to build low-cost solar panels right there in Mali. But here's where the semantic technology comes in. Without a single researcher in some back room finding these links, our site links you to the related videos in that open video world, to the related articles from thousands and thousands of publications, and even the related actions. In this case, maybe you've seen this story and you're so motivated you want to make a donation to the Peace Corps or even consider becoming a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali itself. We like to think of this as taking the video sharing power of YouTube and marrying it with the open information of Wikipedia and harnessing that to the mission of your favorite global development organization. That's ViewChange. Now, how does this work? I want to take you into the back end of our site. Here we are in the back end. We've loaded that same story, Burning in the Sun. Now you see we've loaded the transcript, and when I hit this button, it puts the transcript through our semantic extraction tool. And out pops these dozen or so topics. And it's really quite smart, this tool, isn't it? Because it knows that something like developing country is not two separate words. It's actually an entity. It's a concept. And it checks it against two open databases of information. And then, using all of these topics, it weights them It knows by its analysis that, oh, this story is 91% about solar and alternative energy and 90% about developing countries. And looking at all of these tags weighted in exactly this way, it then goes into the open source world of videos, YouTube, CNN, and pulls out only the most related ones. Then it goes to thousands and thousands of publications and pulls in the most related articles to the video you were watching. Similarly, the most related actions. Well, we think this is a pretty cool tool. And in fact, it's one of the very first applications of semantics to video. Experts here in the UK told us it was the only application of semantic technology to a social change cause. But even innovation and technology in and of itself is not enough. We need to get these tools into the hands of people who will use them to make real change in this world. People like Jacqueline Novogratz over at Acumen Fund. Now, Jacqueline told us that a week does not go by when she doesn't get a call from, say, someone in Nigeria who says, oh, you do such good work, please open an office in Nigeria. Now, she cannot do that. She doesn't have the resources to do that. But now with ViewChange, she can save several stories about her work, several articles, maybe an action campaign, and put those in her personal profile page, which is public-facing, and share that URL with that gentleman in Nigeria so that he can learn from the good work that they are doing in Kenya and India and Pakistan. Or how about our partners over at the One Campaign? Their constituents are firmly part of the Facebook generation, which likes to take short videos and post them to their Facebook pages. So here's a One participant, Lauren Hauser, who has gone to ViewChange. She's picked some of her favorite films, posted them to her website, along with a call out that lets her whole community know what she's passionate about, what stories she likes, what causes she supports. We believe in this way, education, awareness, advocacy, those noble goals are served by very powerful stories. Today, I have introduced you to some real people tackling some very serious issues: human trafficking, war, poverty. But I think if you look closely at their stories, you will see people with real grit, real determination, making true progress against those seemingly intractable problems. When I see these stories, I believe that the MDGs are achievable. And now I turn their stories over to you, to all of you, to make them a part of your lives, to feel the tug of that thread that connects their stories to yours. And I challenge you, use these stories in your work, share them with your communities and with your friends and your family. And I suspect that if you do three simple things, if you watch a story, if you think about a story and act upon it, it will not only change the world, it will change you. This has been my story. Thank you for listening.